just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
We're back here on the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. Joe DeLeone, Ryan Roberts, and we are updating you on the latest thoughts behind the accepted invites for the 2023 Reese's Senior Bowl. We already did one episode where we talked about that first wave. And since then, a week later, we've been hit with a ton of new guys that have been added to the list. So many fun players to talk about, so many exciting names, players that, heck, if you've been listening to the show long enough, you know we've been on them. You know that we've been talking about them. Go listen if you've missed out on any of those prospect breakdowns that we did over the summer. There's some fantastic analysis on those, and we're obviously going to update those once the season ends. But before we get to talking about the Senior Bowl, folks, I just want to quickly remind you to head to Bet Online if you're going to be betting on any of the games this weekend. Your continued source for all sports wagering info. Bet Online features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long, all the way through bowl season, and then even into the basketball season, which is already kicked off. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet on your favorite sports and events. NFL, college football, college basketball, NBA, NHL, you name it. So many different sports. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts. Ryan, I am so out of my environment in New Jersey. I'm on a weird time zone. There's so many issues with being on the East Coast, just in general being weird, but I can't stand how goddamn cold it is. How do you deal with this every single day? I can't do this anymore.
Oh, Joe, stop acting like you're a Southern Cal guy, man. You're from Jersey. You're used to this. You play football in Rhode Island.
I was used to this, but now that it's at least 60 every single day, I'm freezing my nuts. I didn't bring any clothes. I'm so cold.
You know what stinks, man, is I've been talking to a bunch of Notre Dame recruits that are going to be there this weekend for the Boston College game, and it's going to be like in the 20s, and there's snow on the ground. So it could be a lot worse, man. I mean, where is it where you're at? I'm like 40 degrees right now. It's 30 something. Okay. Yeah.
Well,
so you should go to Southern Jersey, man. It's better than North Jersey anyway. So
I'm not going to Philadelphia. I refuse to go to Philadelphia.
I'm not in Philadelphia.
You're in Philadelphia.
30 minutes away from Philadelphia, man. 30 minutes away.
I hope Notre Dame's not hosting any California or West Coast recruits.
They actually are.
Oh,
they actually are, Joe.
Interesting decision to do that.
2024 USC commits is going to be on campus. That's from Long Beach Poly, dude.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh, yeah. Man. I mean,
you know what Brian said yesterday, which is a decent point, man. If this kid comes to campus this weekend with the snow and everything on the ground and then leaves impressed and had a good time, that means Notre Dame actually has a chance, you know? Like that's a decent point. So it's getting cold, man.
I guess. I mean,
we're going to Hershey Park this weekend, and it's going to be freezing. And my wife's like, pack all your warm stuff. I'm just like, oh man, we're in the midst of winter now, aren't we?
Yeah, but bold decision to go to Hershey for a weekend in the middle of November. But praying that you don't get too cold, Ryan.
I appreciate that, Joe. I appreciate that.
We know that the guys that are going to be showing up to Mobile might be a little cold for the Senior Bowl. That was one of my worst transition ever.
That was terrible.
It was cold last year. This is what I do. I'm the master of the microphone. Sean, besides that, though, I want to talk about the list of guys.
What's my name?
Oh, my God. Ryan. I want to talk about it. I'm losing
my
goddamn mind out here these days. Don't forget, it's 6 o'clock my time. What I'm used to.
No, it's 9 o'clock your time.
My body thinks it's 6 a.m. So don't give me that. Ryan, we saw in one of the bigger talking points with the Senior Bowl grouping, the latest round of invites that I saw was the defensive linemen that were invited. And Jim Nagy tweeted out about how this year's grouping, it feels like it's a little bit of a throwback to some of these big, meaty, two-tech guys that are just taking up space, but also some of these guys have some pretty unique traits that they're not that, that old school defensive tackle. They can do a couple more things than what we saw in the early 2000s. Still, that's what Nagy was talking about. And the guys that fit that description, just off the top of the head, Siaki Ika, Keeanu Benton, who we talked about at depth during the offseason, are the two that come to mind. Now, the one thing that you've told me, Ryan, I'm very high on Siaki Ika. I was excited that he received the invite. I have not watched his 2022 tape, but you have a little more insight on him, and you're saying that things have maybe not gone as well?
Well, it's interesting, Joe, because it's a good starting point because you were a big Siaki Ika fan in the summer. I was a big Keeanu Benton fan in the summer.
Right.
So these are two of our favorites of this podcast. I've actually heard that both players have been a little bit up and down in the season so far. So I don't know what the background for Ika is, why it's been a little bit up and down. I haven't personally gone back to his 2022 film yet either at this point. But I know Keeanu Benton, just for a little background, apparently he's been dealing with a knee issue for like the last month and a half. And I was told by a source close to Wisconsin that probably shouldn't be playing, to be honest. Like he's just kind of gutting through, playing like 20, 30 snaps a game and on kind of a bad knee over there. But hopefully he's able to get back to, because it's a big compliment to him, right? He's a tough guy and, he's kind of gutting it out, all that good stuff. But I hope that he gets healthy towards, obviously January, the end of January when the Senior Bowl is scheduled, is able to show out there. But I do think that both players are very interesting athletes for their size. Obviously Ika is all 350 pounds, true nose, 0-1 tech. Keeanu Benton's more 6'4", long arms, could probably play a little bit more outs, shading out to the outside for a defensive line. So it's going to be interesting, those guys, because right now they're not asked to do basically anything against the pass. They are much more run-stopping defensive tackles. So I'm interested to see if both are healthy going into the Senior Bowl, just what type of impact they can have in those one-on-one opportunities in the pass rush reps.
That sucks to hear about Benton dealing with those injuries. And I mean, they've also some context to purely speculation on why they've been up and down. I mean, look at both these teams that they play on. Baylor and Wisconsin have been up and down, and Wisconsin's dealing with a coaching change right now. And it's actually kind of odd that Ben is deciding to gut it out through all this and try and get on the field for whatever limited exposure as he can when he's not even playing under his original head coach. There's not really much to play for.
He is playing though for Jim Leonard, who's been his defensive coordinator, right? That's now the head coach. And I understand your point, Joe. I mean, if I was advising him, I probably would have told him to shut it down for a few weeks and get healthy. I mean, for sure. I heard last game, I think it was the most recent game. Did they just play? Who did they just play? I forget who they played this past week, but apparently he only played like 19 reps all game.
Was it Maryland or Iowa? I know
can't
they played
remember.
them recently, but I forget off the top of my head.
I think it may have been Iowa, but apparently the most recent game, he only had like 19 reps. So like, he's just not healthy. He's just trying to gut it out. And I think there's something to be said about, his background as a 3-star recruit, not highly recruited, has kind of developed into that and been a hard worker type of thing. But I agree with you. I think that it may be wise for him to maybe shut it down for a couple of weeks. But I mean, some NFL folks, because they're very old fashioned what they're thinking, they're going to be like, oh, it's a coach's guy, right? Going to gut it out from start to finish it out, all that type of stuff.
If he's got a bad injury that's going to get flagged during medicals, it's like,
I don't know what the extent of the knee injury is. I just know it's been flaring up on him the last few weeks.
Right.
So,
well, I guess we'll find out when he goes and gets tested and gets medical examinations at the Senior Bowl, and we'll have a little more context, and hopefully he's able to actually participate and play, and he's not just a guy who's showing up and wearing a jersey and standing on the sideline. That's going to be difficult. I didn't know that. I know that Benton is somebody that is to be excited about if he plays up to his potential, but that's extremely disappointing.
Yeah. But he, like we said, it is, what is it? It's November 18th right now. So he's got a couple months to get right for that football game.
Assuming he shuts it down after next week and he doesn't play in the bowl game. And I hope for his sake that he doesn't play in the bowl game.
I don't know what, I mean, look, man, they are not a great football team. They're going to be in a low-end bowl game as it is. I don't see
pinstripe bowl if Notre Dame's not there.
Yeah. So it's shut up, dude. So I think there's going to be several opt-outs of the game, and I don't think that you can hold it against anybody in a Keeanu Benton situation if he, opts out of that football game.
Now, I don't think there's going to be any opt-outs for the Illinois defensive backs. This is a historic year for Illinois, man, and I've been excited watching them. No shocker that Brett Bielema's rallied the boys on defense. We've got 2 defensive backs for the Fighting Illini, Devon Witherspoon and Sidney Brown, and I know you particularly were excited about Witherspoon, and I got to admit, I'm not going to sit here. We're in the middle of the season. We haven't really done full evaluations. We haven't done deep dives on these guys. I haven't watched Witherspoon, and you've kind of taken a peep at him. Why are you excited about him? Like, what's his projection here?
So Illinois actually has 3 defensive backs that have already been invited, Joe. Jartavius Martin, who's the other cornerback.
I was looking for the third guy. I'm there.
Yeah, Jartavius Martin is also invited. Sidney Brown is actually the twin brother of Chase Brown, who's the star running back from Illinois, which is pretty cool. Yeah, they look exactly the same, man. It is wild. They're
physical build too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're pretty much the same size.
Hilarious.
I don't know if you've seen pictures of Chase Brown, but like he's a workout warrior. Sidney Brown is the same way. Like those dudes spend they supposedly have like 6% body fat or some crazy number like that. So they're
I'm hoping that at least once in their time at Illinois, they swapped jerseys and they lined up at their opposite positions without telling the coaches. If they didn't, that is a complete misuse of the opportunity, but that, just that is what it is.
I hope the Yankee twins from South Dakota State have done the same, man, because they're identical twins as well. They're almost the same exact size.
But no one's gonna be shocked when one of them they're both playing receiver. Like no one would have said anything. You could have probably gone through. They've probably done it multiple times. You could probably go through the whole practice without noticing.
I remember that I remember when I talked to Chris Oladokin last year, the quarterback from South Dakota State. He kind of talked about that. He's like, "Yeah, I just called 110 and 19. Like I couldn't tell the difference between the two. It was just kind of funny." But to Devin Witherspoon, Joe, he's a kid. I actually watched him late in the summer this past year, and I actually recommended him for an agent in the consulting side of things because I was like, "This dude is physical. He's got good length, and he's incredibly instinctive football player." So I think that he's a player that could play between the nickel and the outside corner position. I slapped a top 100 grade on him from the 2021 film. And I'll say this, he's been even better in 2022, man. He has been fantastic. I'm not sure he's the fastest corner of all time. I mean, he probably runs 4.5 flat to 4.53, somewhere in that ballpark. Like he's not the most dynamic athlete of all time, but the instinctual game that he plays, the physicality he brings, best tackling corner, I think, in college football, and plays incredibly well against the screen game as well. This kid is a zone-heavy corner who can play some off man, who I think could be a top 50 pick. I really do. If he goes to the Senior Bowl and he has a big week and he tests just good, he doesn't need to be outstanding testing-wise. This kid has a profile where you say, is he a nickel? Is he an outside corner? All I know is that he's going to be a really good football player on the next level. So I'm a big fan of Devin Witherspoon. Could be a top 5 corner in this class when all is said and done. He's good.
Yeah, and the one thing with this corner class, too, is it doesn't really have a ton of big name depth right now. And having a name like Witherspoon, who's a Senior Bowler, who has that advantage to rise up the ranks a little bit, like that's huge. Like that's fantastic that we're adding another defensive back to the class. We've also talked about how the class kind of lacks offensive lineman names, and we put out in the forefront, and we both kind of agreed that Jaylen Duncan might be offensive tackle 1, and haven't necessarily done that full evaluation again. So our final grades are not settled on Jaylen Duncan, but he received an invite. That was one that I was excited about because I thought that he was going to be in the, in that junior classification, but he ends up going into the Senior Bowl here and he's going to be playing in it. To me, he's somebody who playing on a mediocre, okay-ish Maryland team this year goes to the Senior Bowl and could really make some money for himself. Like there's always that one tackle that has a really good week. I feel like Duncan's going to be that guy because he's going to be facing off with so many edge rushers and he can really, really build up his stock going to Mobile.
Yeah. Well, and also Matthew Bergeron got an invite as well from Syracuse, who I know we were both fans of in the summer as well. I mean, just kind of focusing in on Duncan. Duncan's been very good in 2022. I feel like he's starting to put things together really well, which is great. I don't think that an ascension to offensive tackle 1 is ultimately going to happen for him, but I do think that he has a very good opportunity to go in round 1. I think that he has that type of upside, some just kind of understanding of where he slots in from agents and scouts that I've talked to about him. I think that he's a no doubt top 64 pick, but I think he has an opportunity to go also in the top 32 because he's a player that has good foot quickness, length is fine, he has some power profile to him, and his zone-based running scheme. I think that this kid is a starting level caliber player within the first 2 years of his NFL career, and I think he has blindside potential at the next level. So I think that Jaylen Duncan's put together a really nice senior season. And now with the opportunity to go to the Senior Bowl and face off against some of the better pass rushers that'll be there, like the Will McDonalds of the world from Iowa State, who have also accepted an invite, I think it's a big opportunity for a guy like a Jaylen Duncan to continue that rise to first-round conversation.
And Bergeron, again, to your point too, is somebody who we spoke about during the offseason and how he just was like so consistent. Like he was easily the most up to his ceiling out of any of the guys in the class. And he's a big, massive guy. He's a great player. And Syracuse was doing really well for a point this season. And he was somebody that like I always brought up when I was talking about and previewing games for Syracuse is like, they've got the offensive line and it's led by one of the best guys in the country, which is Matt Bergeron. And to your point, I completely forgot that Will McDonald received an invite as well. And like, that's an important one to be going because we need to see that competition for these tackles.
Yeah, he's an interesting player because, I mean, just talking about Bergeron for a second, I got to see him in person, obviously. He fits the profile. Like, he's right around 6'5", right around 34-inch arms. He's a good athlete. I still think that there's some concerns with him from a core strength perspective. Like, I just don't think he sits down on power incredibly well, but from a quickness and just body control perspective, a lot of nice blindside traits for Matthew Bergeron. So I think he is another kid that's steady on day 2 right now. I think that he has an opportunity to go somewhere in the second and third rounds and those guys have an opportunity to go against a guy like Will McDonald, Joe, because I feel like Will McDonald is the most misused player in all of college football, man. Iowa State played him in their 3-man front is just a misuse of a 6'4", 34-plus inch arm, athletic, sleek rusher, kind of like Myjai Sanders last year for Cincinnati, but he's a better version, in my opinion, Will McDonald speaking. And he's going to be a guy that's going to test these dudes in one-on-one pass rush reps on an island, and he's going to be one of the most bendiest and most explosive pass rushers that they're going to see all season. So being able to hold up against that type of speed, that type of dynamic ability, I think it's going to be huge for these offensive tackles. And it's also huge for Will McDonald because he doesn't get a lot of outside pass rush reps, true outside pass rush reps, working from wide alignments in that Iowa State system. They ask him to play head up alignments a ton, which is not advantageous for his skill set. So him getting a little bit further outside, showing that ability to bend around the arc, I think it's a big opportunity not only for those tackles to counteract him, but for Will McDonald to show that he can do that because I know he has all the traits to do it. It's just Iowa State doesn't really feature that in their defensive plan right now.
He absolutely is going to be fun to watch. And that was something I remember during the offseason just being the most bizarre thing that why do defensive coordinators just not know how to use certain guys?
Joe, he's 6'4", and he was listed in the spring at 226 pounds, and they're playing him in a 4-4-I a ton. I'm just like, why? What are we doing here?
It's everyone like lauds that Iowa State defense to be so good. And like that scheme that they run, it
is a good defense, though. It is a good defense.
But the reason why they've been bad this year, and I know that they've had some really good games that they've put on tape, like the way that they played against Texas was very commendable. But it's very clear, especially with Will McDonald, that they just slot guys where they're where they have to be, and not trying to be adaptive to what's going to work the best and what's going to work for certain guys' traits. I totally agree that it's just bizarre. And you actually get him rushing with Jaylen Duncan and Matt Bergeron. He's a riser. He's somebody to pay attention to. He's probably going to have a big week.
He could end up being a first-round pick when all is said and done because he has all the traits to be that true outside pass rusher. I'm interested to see what he comes in at weight-wise because, like I said, he's listed at like 240 in the 240s.
He's lean as hell.
But he was in the spring for the scouts that came around. He weighed in at 226, at least for the NFS scouts that came in. So it's going to be interesting to see, kind of like the Myjai Sanders thing last year. Like, what is his actual weight? What is his play weight? Does he drop weight a ton? Like, just that back and forth of actual playing weight versus the listed weight is going to be interesting to watch with Will McDonald.
Absolutely. And the last guy that I want to bring up, and then if there's anyone else that you want to bring up, I staked my claim in Steve Avila being the number one center in this class during the offseason. And
he's not even playing center this year, Joe. He's playing guard. You know that?
I did know that. To my point, though, my claim that I made is that I really like Steve Avila as an offensive line prospect.
Yep.
And I felt like not enough people were talking about him. But now he's had a really good season on a really good TCU team this year that's outplayed expectations. TCU was supposed to be terrible. I think everyone thought that they were going to be a bad program this year. And Avila, who I spoke about being just a massive hulking body, who the movement skills for a player of his size were just so unique. And that was what excited me. It seems that his placement at guard is going to be far better for his projection because it fits some of those inadequacies that I mentioned and we both mentioned in his evaluation, some issues getting to the second level. But I just want to take a quick second here that he got the invite to the Senior Bowl, which was maybe expected, but he's also in the running for the Outland Trophy. He's been having a fantastic season. And I think if I have time this weekend, I want to start watching tape on these guys, and he's who I want to start with to see how he's performed. Does he live up to that expectation? I don't know if I think you said that you haven't really watched much of him either, but shit, man, from some of the stuff that you keep seeing people talking about him, he might be a first-round guy. He might have built up. He could be. What other guards would you put ahead of him right now? Because it seems like Skoronski, we talked about him playing tackle. We talked about Paris Johnson playing tackle. What other guards go ahead of him if he's now officially a guard?
I think Osiris Torrance is going to be the first guard off the board from Florida. I truly do. I mean, I just kind of my
opinion. He's played fantastic. I can't argue with that.
He has played really well. I mean, but I will say this, Joe, about Avila specifically. I didn't love him at center because I don't think his body type and his play style is very translatable to center. I like the fact that he's playing guard this year. I think that is very good for his profile because he's 6'3.5", 339 pounds. That is a guard body type. That is not a center body type. So I think that that's going to help him a ton. I do think there's a little scheme specificness to how he plays the game, right? I don't think he's going to be a zone blocking or at least an outside zone heavy guard at the next level, but in a power-based scheme, a gap scheme, and that runs also some inside zone, I think that he has displacement power. I think he's a massive dude. So I think that's going to be a huge opportunity. The one thing I want to see though, is that at center, you're usually uncovered in the passing game, and you're usually helping with guards and in pass protection. I look forward to seeing him at guard in the Senior Bowl with a little bit more one-on-ones against some of the sleeker three techniques that are going to be at the event. So I think that's a big opportunity for Steve Avila to show what he can do a little more in space, because I know he can be a mauler. I know he can be physical. I know he can displace. That stuff is all good. The All-Star circuit is designed to show the weaknesses and the one-on-one opportunities, because that's where the traits really show. So I'm really curious to see just how good of an athlete Steve Avila is.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch him, and I'm gonna post as many clips as I possibly can.
You should, man.
It's gonna be
that'd be a better brand for you than just shitting on a bunch of college football teams.
I do both things, Ryan. I am diverse. Yes. I will talk up and bring up the Steve Avilas and the Christian Mahoganies, who I was high on, which I forget if Steve followed me or not, but I do remember he liked one of my tweets. It was something along those lines when he saw that I was tweeting about him.
He follows me, so
he might have. Wait. We're gonna confirm here that if he followed me or not, because then he's officially guard one if he follows me. That's all.
I hope he did.
Christian Mahogany also follows me, and then that made him guard. Wait, he does follow me. Oh
good. Man.
I am 1000%, Steve. If you do happen to listen to this show, I'm going to reach out. I want to have you on the show. I would like you to be my one interview this cycle.
Well, Joe, and I mean, can we at least call him by his real name? His name is Esteban Avila, if we're being technical.
His Twitter
here.
Says Steve. Well, we can ask him that. We can ask him that when we interview him.
All right, we can do that.
All right, Ryan, I think that's a fun note to wrap us up on.
Wait, no, you're not going to hit your brand here, man. I mean, we got a punter.
God, we're not talking about. Okay,
we got a punter.
There was punters, and there was a kicker from Michigan State who's goofy and wears glasses. Everybody. Yeah. It's
how about McClendon Curtis getting an interview, getting an invite, man? Your FCS brand as well.
We didn't talk about him.
I don't think so, but it's not a big deal.
We talked about him on the FCS show. Was there anyone I missed that you wanted to hit on?
There's been a lot of guys who've just been coming off the board. I feel like there was one guy that I wanted to briefly talk about. I mean, McClendon Curtis was one. He's going to be interesting because he's been playing a lot more.
Massive.
He's been playing a lot more offensive tackle this year for Chattanooga than guard in the past.
I don't think he's a tackle.
No, he's not a tackle at the next level. He's not a tackle at the next level. He's definitely a guard. One guy, last guy to hit on, Anthony Johnson, defensive back for Virginia, Joe. I just watched him pretty recently. He's a corner. He's talented, man. He's long, pretty athletic. He can run a little bit. I don't think he's the most cat quick dude of all time, but in the right system, I think that he has nice ball skills. He's got nice length. So he's an outside corner worthy to keep an eye on. And I really want to hit on him, mostly, man, because I feel so bad for that Virginia program right now with dealing with everything they're dealing with and having to cancel games and doing all that type of stuff. Anthony Johnson, despite that team not playing well this year, is a really good corner prospect who could be a top 100 pick when all is said and done. So just wanted to send a shout out to Anthony Johnson from Virginia real quick.
And Dontavian Wicks also got an invite. And
he
was somebody who we brought up during the offseason and the unique grouping of receivers that they have. But I know that the timing it was kind of random that they both accepted their invites when this all happened.
Yes.
And Sean and I talked about it on the FBS pod where we just, terrible circumstance that things happen, but it's good that there's a positive light, with everything bad that's happening and the horrible tragedy that they're dealing with as a football program. There's still a positive light. I know that they're probably not even thinking about this stuff right now, but it's like just something to look at it, distract from, and again, look at as a bright light in a dark time. But
so I don't want to say silver lining because there's not a silver lining to the tragedy that's happening, but both players at least have an opportunity to play more football moving forward, which is great for them.
Yes. We'll wrap on that note at Joe DeLeone at Rise and Draft. We're going to start diving back into these prospect pairings that we did during the off season. And it's that time of year, folks. We're a couple weeks away from the regular season being over. We're going to get into postseason play for FBS football, FCS football as well. Stay tuned. We will be back with more. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, folks.